Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video we're going to be talking about Tokyo Smash Bootcamp, and what this essentially is Japanese Summit with a bunch of really top talent invaders. It's kind of the other way around. When you look at the older style summits, you have a lot of American talent, some invaders. Well, now we have a lot of Japan's mainstays that never really got the chance to show themselves at Summit, as well as a couple of invaders. You have DeBuzz, T, Shuton, Cosmos, Mr. R, Lima, GACKT, Mutes, Sen, Riddles, Zomba, Aquila, Hiro, Osimo, Now, and Mia. This event is incredibly stacked, and we're going to be going over how I think it'll go down. Also, a couple things I should have mentioned. This event is happening on May 3rd because I believe it is Golden Week in Japan. So if you ever find yourself having the time, highly recommend you watch this. We're going to be doing a recap on it if you do miss it though. And then I'm not actually super sure what the formatting for this event's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be a normal 16-man bracket, nothing crazy, but it could be old Summit rules. It could be Leota C rules. We're going to have to check it. But for this video, it's just going to be a 16-man bracket where we decide the seeding. And speaking of the seeding, I have it done right here. We have Aquila first seed, second seed Mia, third seed Riddles, fourth seed T, fifth place Shuton, sixth place GACKT, seventh place Osimo, eighth place Hiro, ninth was Cosmos, 10th was Mutes, 11th Lima, 12th Now, 13th DeBuzz, 14th Zomba, 15th Sen, and then 16th you have Mr. R. Now, the seeding for this tournament was pretty difficult for me to do, and I'll go through my reasonings for all of them, starting off with Mr. R at 16th. I think putting Mr. R at 16th is fair, but I definitely think he could overperform this seed. He's done really well at some of the recent European majors. He hasn't shown up super hard in Japan, but he's only been to like one or two events, so he hasn't really had the time to show up super hard. I'm also pretty sure he won like a pretty stacked local as well, so he has been doing okay, and Sheik is a character that you can find success against a lot of these matchups and brackets. So if Mr. R does not place his 16th place seed, I wouldn't be super surprised. At 15th, you have Sen. Now, Sen was a really tough one for me to seed, just considering how well he did this weekend at Maizuma. He got 13th place there, got a bunch of really strong wins along the way, but I'm going to be giving him 15th still, just because I don't want that one performance to be the only thing that makes me put him above everyone else. If you want to switch Sen up because you really value that recency, then I think that's fine as well. And then Zomba and DeBuzz, I think, are fairly interchangeable. They both had some pretty strong tournaments this year. The reason I put DeBuzz higher is just because I was a little bit more impressed by his 2022 year. But if you want to put Zomba higher, I think that's also fine. He outplaced him at Collision. You have DeBuzz doing better at Let's Make Big Moves, but they've been kind of going back and forth. Genesis, you have similar results from them, so I'm going to give DeBuzz the higher seed there. But if you want to switch it up to Zomba, I think that's fine as well. You also have DeBuzz underperforming at Maizuma and Zomba not attending the event, so that's definitely another factor. So I'm actually going to switch Zomba and DeBuzz just because I remember that Zomba was able to beat DeBuzz fairly recently at a pretty stacked regional, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because these are all players that can not only overperform their seed, but they're all seeded to get the same 13th place placing. So if you want to switch them around in there, I don't think it really matters too much. In 12, though, I am going to have Now, which may surprise a lot of people that haven't been super closely watching the Japanese seed, and he might even be seeded a little bit low because this guy has just been farming. Definitely the second best Mario in the world at this point. Making arguments for number one, I'd still say Kurama definitely has it, especially after that Summit performance and that major upset performance as well. But Now looked really good at Kagaribi, had a decent Maizuma this weekend, so he's definitely a top threat going into this event. Now Lima, if you want to put him below Now just because of how good that Kagaribi run was, I think that's fine. But Lima, they got the same event at Maizuma, and you also have Lima getting 5th place at Collision, doing extremely well there. He's only had 3 events this year. We're not going to talk about the first one because it's fine, don't even worry about it. But the other 2 have been very strong for him, and I'm really excited to see Lima going into this event. And at 10, you have Mutes. Now Mutes was the hardest player for me to see because he has 9th at Summit with incredible wins, 2nd at Genesis, and a massive underperformance this weekend with a 65th. Now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to put him at number 10, but I'm still going to put Cosmos above him at number 9, even though Cosmos doesn't have the peaks. Cosmos has multiple top 8s in Japan, has been incredibly consistent. He also underperformed at Maizuma, but just because Cosmos has been doing so well, aside from that and Collision where he didn't do great, I'm going to give him the higher seed. He has more reps in Japan. He's gotten top 8 at multiple majors here. So I'm going to give it to Cosmos. Again, if you want to switch Mutes and Cosmos, maybe even Hiro and Mutes, I'm kind of that category is a little bit interchangeable. I think that's fine as well. In 8th place, you have Hiro, and unlike Cosmos and Mutes, he actually did pretty well this weekend, getting himself a nice 7th place, and that's going to be the placement that makes me give him the higher seed, just because these players have all had some lackluster tournaments this year. They've also all had some pretty good tournaments this year. Hiro also had a really nice finish at Kagaribi, getting, I believe, 7th place there as well, so I'm going to give Hiro the benefit of the doubt. His most recent run is pretty good. Cosmos and Mutes weren't so great. Again, if you want to switch any of them around, I think that's absolutely fine. But just because Hiro did so well this weekend, I'm going to give it to him. But speaking of doing well this weekend, GACKT was on a tear, my lord. I initially had GACKT over Osimo, but just because Osimo's 2023 year has been so amazing, like throughout the entirety of it, his worst performance was this weekend where he got 13th. I'm going to give it to him, but GACKT played crazy this weekend. He just looked out of his mind. Some of the best Nest play I've ever seen, getting a really strong third place there. So I hope he can carry that momentum going into this weekend. And then finally for our 5th seed, you have Shuton, who's also been doing very well as of late. Did do amazing last weekend though. Got 9th place, or rather this weekend, got 9th place at my Sumo, which is again crazy that the bar is that high, that's a bad placement. But before that, he had won back-to-back majors, and I imagine he wants the 3-peat this weekend, even though it's an interrupted 3-peat. But you know what? If he gets it, we're just going to say it's a 3-peat anyway. My number 4 seed is going to be T, and again, I think T and Shuton are fairly interchangeable. They both missed top 8 at Maizuma. You have T getting 9th place at Genesis being one of his better performances. But outside of that, he's gotten 2nd at Umabora and then most recently 5th at this weekend's Maizuma. So I'm going to give it to T. Again, if you want to give it to Shuton because he was doing really well, won back-to-back majors, I think that's fine. But Shuton also got 25th at Gen 1.1, has a couple more top 8s missed, but he's also just been to more stuff. So again, it really is what you value. I'm going to give it to T though. And then the top 3 for me is very set in stone. You have Riddles at 3rd, Mia at 2nd, and Aqua at 1st. You do have Riddles with a rough Genesis. Everything outside of that has been amazing. He has been doing incredible this year. His other worst performance would be like Summit, where he got 9th and he beat Spargo there, which is just ridiculous. And then Mia and Aqua being 2 and 1. I feel like I don't really need to explain, so I'm not even going to. Now we have our top 16 bracket made by the lovely Cookie Monsters. Their stuff will be down below. And the first matchup that we have is Aquila versus Mr. R. I'm going to give that one to Aquila just because I think Steve Sheik is a pretty rough matchup, as well as there's not as many top Steves in EU that there are in Japan. Specifically Aquila, he is obviously the top one. I mean, he's the best player in the world. But at least in NA, you have Onin that's at least kind of close. But Aquila is ways ahead of Onin right now, and he's ways ahead of everyone else. So it's going to be pretty tough for Mr. R to make that, but not impossible. Hito versus Cosmos now. Hito did beat Cosmos this weekend, and I was saying that playing Hito for the first time is extremely difficult. Playing him the second time, it makes it a little easier, but it's still really hard. And I'm going to say that Hito wins it again, though Cosmos has some very strong adaptation still, so not out of the park. T versus Zomba. Now, this one's pretty interesting because Zomba is the Japan Slayer, and I'm going to say he re-earns that title at this tournament, gets a massive win over T. Then you have Shuton versus Now. Now, this one's pretty interesting. I'm going to give it to Shuton just because Aegis Mario was not a great matchup, but I've been pretty impressed by Now in the past. He's obviously an incredible player. He's been making some massive upsets lately, and if he added this one to his list, it wouldn't be the first one that he's done. Mia versus Sen. This is just a pretty tough match for Ness, at least in my opinion, so I'm going to give that one to Mia. GACKT Mutace. Now, on the other hand, Mutace is actually pretty good versus Ness. He's actually beaten Sen before in bracket multiple times, so I'm going to say that Mutace takes that. Then you have Riddles versus Dabuz. This usually goes in Riddles' favors, but Dabuz has been able to take it in the past. And then finally, you have Osimo versus Lima. Now, this one I'm especially excited for if it happens because I have no idea who's going to win, because it can be a little bit rough for Bayonetta because Ryu is fairly heavy and they are killing you 1 or 2 hits. I don't know how you're supposed to catch Bayonetta. I think Bayonetta is fairly good at breaking focus as well with how many bullets she has and multi-hits she has, specifically with the up B and the forward air stuff. So I'm going to say that Lima is able to catch Osimo off guard and actually get that. Also, just so people don't yell at me, I do know that T was able to beat Zomba the last time they played at main stage, but for the sake of content, we're keeping Zomba in that winner side of the bracket. Starting off with losers round 1, our first matchup being Mr. R versus Cosmos. I'm going to give it to Cosmos just because I've been a little bit more impressed by him lately, but I've also just been able to see more of Cosmos. Mr. R is kind of stuck in Europe right now, and he's been doing well at the European events that he's been going to. He's honestly probably the most underrated player at this event, him or Now. He's extremely talented. If he was able to beat anyone here, I wouldn't be super shocked, but again, still saying that I am going to give it to Cosmos. Then you have T versus Now. I'm going to give it to T just because the last time they played, T was able to take it. It was fairly recent, but Now does have some very good adaptation skills, so we'll have to see how he prepares for that set if it does happen. And then you have Sen versus GACKT. Now, this is a Ditto. Dittos can go literally any other way, but Sen does have a couple secondaries. I highly doubt we'll see them, but it's not impossible. But Sen's old name was also Best Ness, which means he is the best Ness in the Ditto. Guaranteed, let's go NA, baby. But again, it's a Ditto. I really have no idea how it's going to turn out. And then finally, you have Dabuz versus Osimo. I'm going to give this one to Dabuz because I don't think Dabuz is ever going to use to like a Shoto player. I feel like Dabuz is really good versus that Shoto playstyle. I think Rosalina does pretty well versus the matchup. I know Minmin does pretty well in that matchup as well. We'll have to see which character uses. I think Almar does decent as well. So I think Dabuz has that one in the bag, but also it is still Osimo. Really hard to bet against. It feels weird for me to put Osimo out at 13th, but I mean, we're riding on that NA copium. We're going to be keeping that trend up in the video. So I'm going to say he gets out and Dabuz gets that pretty big upset. In winners round 2, we have Aquila versus Hero being our first matchup, and I'm going to give that one to Aquila. It's not a great matchup on paper. Aquila is the best player in the world. It's really hard to bet against him. Hero is still incredibly scary, but realistically, I think you have to bet Aquila there. Then you have Zomba versus Shuton. Now, any other video, I probably go Shuton here, but because Zomba is the savior of NA, and the only time Shuton's been able to beat him, the record is 3-2 in Shuton's favor, was at Crowned Weekend. He beat him 3 times in a row at Crown. He beat him twice at the pre-local and once in the main event. I'm going to say that was a fluke. Zomba wasn't feeling it that weekend. Shuton was hot, and Zomba, the savior of NA, is able to take that massive dub here. It's good. I think Zomba's actually going to pop off this tournament, though. This is not a bit. I've been really, really impressed by Zomba. He's been slowly getting back to the super top echelon. Had a nice 9th place at Collision. I hope he carries that momentum and farms this weekend. I genuinely do believe in him. I think he's extremely talented and has been kind of getting left by the wayside because all the other Raw players have still been doing pretty well, whereas the results haven't quite matched 2022. But I think this is his big comeback personally. Then you have Mia versus Mides. I talked about this a bit in the Meisuma video. This matchup is trash. It is so bad for Peach. Mides has been able to beat Meister in the past recently at Genesis. Mia and Meister are different players though, and just because of how bad the matchup is, I'm going to give this one to Mia. And then finally, you have Riddles versus Lima. Now, this one's fairly interesting because if it's Kazuya, Lima is going to camp him so hard, like insanely hard. If it's Terry, Lima's going to camp him so hard. But at least he has a little bit more ability to track it down. But on Kazuya, of course, you do have that touch hit. It really is which one Riddles wants to take. Does he want mobility and better neutral, or does he want more damage output? It's going to be interesting. I think Riddles can do it either way. I think he's going to have to use his stage picks pretty smart. And if I had to guess, I think Terry's probably going to bring him more of the success than Kazuya because I think Lima is just really good versus Kazuya, and it's also a fairly tough matchup. But we'll have to see there. I'm still going to bet with Riddles, though, especially just considering the crazy losers run he had last weekend. I hope he's able to carry that momentum into this event. Our first matchup in the losers round 2 is going to be Lima versus Cosmos, and I'm going to give this one to Lima just because he is really, really good at doing a whiff punish playstyle. I've talked about this a lot. The camping Bayonetta is really strong. Aegis is a character, a lot of Aegis players are just throwing out moves because their advantage state is so good. The risk reward is heavily skewed in their favor, and the frame data is definitely on their side. If Cosmos does that versus Lima, he's going to lose. He's going to get destroyed, and I think Cosmos can adapt on the fly, but it might be a little bit too late, and then Lima's already stolen the set from him. They have played once in the past. Cosmos did win. It was a very long time ago. I'm going to give Lima the benefit of the doubt here. And then for Mudes versus T, I'm going to give this one to T. Mudes, honestly, really, really unlucky bracket from him. He'd be better off just losing the GACKT round 1 and then going through the loser side of bracket. And even then, he would still run into probably, Shuton or Zomba, which isn't amazing. But T has a very positive record versus Mudes. And most of the sets aren't really close. I think it's 4-0 in T's favor. So maybe Mudes has that adaptation. But going off of history, you got to give that one to T. Then you have Shuton versus Sen. Now, I'm going to give it to Sen because GACKT was able to beat Shuton this weekend, even though the record is 6-6 between them lifetime, and it was also an incredibly close set. I'm going to start the narrative that Shuton has a Nest Curse, because why not? It's 2023, we can do whatever we want, new storylines are being born, and Shuton with his Nest Curse does lose to Sen. And then we have Hiro versus Dabuz. Now, Dabuz should not be losing to Bowser. He has experience versus Leon. I think they're from the same region, at least they were. So he has experience in the Bowser matchup. He should not be caught off guard. He's also playing some pretty abysmal matchups for Bowser now. For the 30th time, it is Hiro. He can do it, but I'm going to say that Dabuz is able to take that. In winter semis, our first matchup is going to be Aquila versus Zomba, and who has Aquila lost a set to? In the entire world, it's a very small list of players. Who's on that list? I'll tell you who. Zomba is one of those players, and for that reason, I'm going to give the win to Aquila because he did win the last time they played at Let's Make Moves Miami. But it's definitely a very real possibility that Zomba is able to make the upset, just like it is for all these other ones. Even though he lost to T last time they played, he lost to Shuton the last time they played, he lost to Aquila last time they played. He has beaten all of these players in the past. I think he can do it again. We'll have to see if he does turn up this weekend because, again, he's proven that he's done it before. Then you have Mia versus Riddles. Now, I'm going to give this one to Mia because we saw them play recently. It wasn't great. It's a pretty tough match for Riddles as well, but maybe in the past couple days, he's just been grinding super hard to the matchup again. I doubt it. He's in Japan. He's in the new country for the first time. Maybe it's not his first time there, but regardless, he's probably been enjoying the sightseeing, so maybe not as much time in the game watch matchup, but also, I don't really know. Maybe he's been grinding that super hard, has figured it out. We'll have to see this weekend, or I guess this Wednesday. Then you have Lima versus T. Now, this one's going to be fairly interesting because Pac-Man, great matchup for Pac-Man. Kazuya, not a great matchup for Kazuya. Bayonetta, I have no idea how T is versus Bayonetta, and he probably doesn't either because there is no Bayonetta players in Japan that are on the level of Lima is. I can guarantee you that Lima is ridiculous, so he's probably not going to be ready for this caliber of experience. I'm going to say that the Pac-Man matchup is good enough that he is able to overcome Lima, but if he's trying to stick it out with Kazuya, I think there's a super real possibility he could lose that. Then you have Send versus DeBuzz. Now, DeBuzz usually wins this matchup. I believe it is 2-0 in his favor, but we saw Send perform miracles this last weekend with his amazing 13th place run. It's not impossible that he can do it again here, but just going off the history, I'm going to give that one to DeBuzz. In losers quarters, you have Zomba versus T and Riddles versus DeBuzz, 2 runbacks, and for runback number 1, I'm going to say that T is able to take that just because he is able to switch between Kazuya and Pac-Man, and I think going into a runback that gives you a bigger advantage when you have a stronger secondary because you can keep the tempo different, but you are able to retain that information, so it's a little bit weird to go into the runback with, but also maybe he's switching a lot in the first set. Maybe we even see the Lucina from Zomba. I doubt it, but it's not an impossibility. And then you have Riddles versus DeBuzz, and this could go a lot of ways. It could be Rosalina, it could be Almar, it could be Minmin, it could be Kazuya, it could be Terry, but regardless of the way it pans out, I'm still going to give it to Riddles just because he's been looking really good as of late, and DeBuzz has not quite been on his A game. He also hasn't been to as much stuff, admittedly, but Riddles, when I've seen him, has been looking on fire. He usually wins that set, so I'm going to give it to him. My top 4 seeds, Aquila, Mia in the winner side, T, Riddles in the loser side. I think this is the first time I've ever done a bracket, and it actually projected as the seeds were supposed to be. I promise I didn't do this on purpose, but this is going to be fairly cut and dry for me because a lot of these matchups we've not only seen recently, but they've been fairly one-sided. Aquila, Mia. Mia did win it at Meisuma, but this weekend, or that Meisuma 11, but at Meisuma 12, Aquila clearly proved he is the king of that matchup, was able to take it. T, Riddles, they had a full Kazuya Ditto. I think this will not be a full Kazuya Ditto. It could be for the 3-peat, you know, Ultimate 1, T takes it, now Riddles takes it most recently. They're going to have their final run back, but just because Riddles was able to take it the last time, I'm going to give it to Riddles. I already talked about how rough the Mia matchup is for Riddles. I'm going to give it to Mia, and in Grand Finals, I will say, I think Mia will get a reset because he has been crazy as of late, and he has taken sets off Aquila in the past, but I will say that Aquila closes out the entire tournament. A little bit anticlimactic, but hey, when you get your top 4 seeds in the top 4, you kind of got to utilize that, make it out, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm really excited to see how this event goes. There will be a recap on it if you do miss it, so do not worry about that. Curious to see what the format is. I have no idea if I just completely missed a part of the bracket. If I did, let me know down below. If not, that's great. Support's been absolutely real. Thank you guys for everything, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.